Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Writers Chat. This is the show where we talk about all things writerly by writers and for writers. And we're glad that you're here, either live talking in the chat or watching the replay on Serious Writers YouTube channel. So today we have a very special guest with us who's going to be sharing her personal story. And I will turn this over to Brandy, who will be introducing her to us. So take it away, Brandy.
Hi, I am so pleased I get to introduce my special friend, Pam Halter. I just love Pam, and you'll love her too when you hear her talk. She's just fantastic. So let me tell you a little bit about Pam. Pam Halter is a lifelong resident of Southern New Jersey. She's a children's, middle grade, and young adult author for the most part, but has fallen in love with writing short stories. She writes good short stories. When Pam's not writing, she enjoys quilting, sewing, crafting, cooking, gardening, reading, Bible study, playing the piano, going down the shore, excuse me, as they say in New Jersey, and walking long country roads where she has discovered fairy homes, emerging dragons, and trees eating wood gnomes. If you might not have guessed, she maybe just writes a little bit of speculative fiction. It's also the perfect way for her to enjoy God's creation while praising and praying. So I said that a little backwards, while praying and praising him. Yeah. So Pam, I'm so glad that you are here with us and you will talk to us today. I believe the title of your talk is, what is it? Oh goodness. I forgot, but God didn't. Yes, yes. Awesome. Please share with us about your journey today in writing.
All right. Thanks for having me. We were talking before the recording of, I always think, why does somebody care about my writing journey? But I love hearing everybody else's. So here we go. I usually like to say I started writing in April of 1994. And because April 29th, which is this coming Saturday, 1994, I lost a baby boy. And he would be 29 if he had lived. And I started writing after that as a way to cope with grief. And however, that's not when I started writing. Not really. Most of us were asked, when did you start writing? When did I really start writing? So I have notes, so I'm gonna go with them. I made up stories before I could even write them down. Can y'all relate to that, right? Made them up before I can even write them down. Mostly telling my sister stories. She's younger than me, so she'd be like, tell me a story, and I would just make one up. I wrote adventures for the neighborhood kids to act out. Like we played Batman and Robin, and I wrote all the adventures and cast all the characters, and we had to act it out. And if they didn't do it right, they had to do it again. Made up, sister, episodes for our Barbie dolls. We didn't just play Barbies. There were episodes, and some were that we played over and over again. So it's like we knew the story and everything went in a certain order, and every doll had their own name, their own personality, their own voice, and we acted them out. And the one day we asked the neighbor girl across the street, Janet, to come over and play with us. Well, she didn't, all her Barbies sounded the same, and she would shake them and go, my sister and I looked at each other like, what is she doing? Because she had no idea that she was supposed to follow the script that I wrote. So we never invited her again. We played the game Clue with my dad's best friend, Mr. Duffy, scuba diver. And so we did a lot of stuff with them and their son, Mark Duffy, who we just called Duffy. We played Clue. We played our own rules. But what we ended up doing mostly is all the characters, we made up stories about them. And they were really bad at it. So I ended up making all the stories. So every time we got together, I would have a story written out featuring Colonel Mustard or Professor Plum or Miss Scarlet and all of that. So there was that. I wrote skits for Girl Scouts because we'd all get in a group and everybody would say, what do we want to do a skit about? And I'd be So I always end up writing it. I'm thinking, doesn't anybody else have any ideas? And none of them ever did. So I wrote all the skits for Girl Scouts. At some point in high school, I was into Gothic novels and I started to write one of them. I want to be a writer. This is great. I want to write stories. I never went anywhere without a book to read, right? So everything I wanted to do, and I would say to my parents, I want to do this, or I want to tap dance. No, you can't make a living at that. I want to play the flute. No, we have a piano. That's what you're going to play. I want to, whatever it was I wanted to do, I heard, no, you can't make a living at that. So by the time got to senior high school and everybody was going, what do you want to do out of school? And I told my high school sweetheart, I want to be a mom. And I did not add, I want to be a mom and a writer. Because by then you don't tell anybody what you really, really want to do. When you keep hearing everything that you had passion for was, no, you can't make a living at that. So I basically, I lied and said I wanted to be an English teacher. Everybody was okay with that, so yeah, I secretly wanted to be a mom and a writer. And I got out of high school and I took a class for hairdressing because mom and dad said, get a job and move out, or go to Salem Community College for cosmetology. And so being that I didn't have a job I could live on, that's what I did. And after that, I met my son's father and got pregnant, got married. Life was crazy. We were young, immature, didn't know how to be married, let alone parents, and split up. And then there was a really bad relationship in between there before I met Daryl. Everything squashed then, because when you live under every kind of abuse you can possibly think of, then everything gets squashed. And I got the courage to kick him out. And then I met Daryl, and we're going to be married 33 years on Friday. So I met him 35 years ago, and we got married. Told we weren't be able to have kids because I had endometriosis really bad, and I had major surgery for that. So we didn't worry about birth control because they said 18 months to 2 years, if at all. And at that point, we got married. I was 31. So I'm like, yeah, let's not wait, 5 or 6 years before we try. And we got Anna right away. Right away. There she was. And then Mary, and then baby Michael. And after I lost him, late term miscarriage, going into my 17th week. So we knew it was a boy because we saw him and he was perfect. Looked like he was asleep. So can I tell you how amazing? This is like a side note here. Every little finger, every little toe, I said to the nurse, is it a boy or a girl? She said, let's look. And she lifted his little leg and we went, it's a boy, he was perfect. He just didn't have hair on his head. And I don't know how anybody can say babies that little are not babies. Anyway, okay. So as a way to cope with the grief, I was encouraged to do some writing. And so I wrote cheesy poems for the baby, which I won't share with you because they're really cheesy, but they comforted me, And then I wrote a story, a picture book, and all this love of writing came back. And I'm like, I love writing. I love writing. I love making up stories. I love this, love this. So I wrote Beatrice Loses Her Doll. And then I wrote, I don't know, several more Beatrice stories. Didn't know what to do with them. Saw an ad in a church paper because at that point, no, I was church secretary for almost 3 years. So I took Anna with me, and then I took Mary. And when I got pregnant again, and I was 35 then, and I said, I can't take 3 babies to work. So I decided I was going to stay home. So that's what I did. Even after we lost the baby, I stayed home, with the girls. But our priest, who was a woman, she knew I was interested in writing. And so she gave me an ad that, so Vantage Press. Have any of y'all ever heard of Vantage Press? I hope they're not still a thing. They're a vanity publisher. I didn't know what that was. I sent it off. They accepted it. I was like, woohoo. And then I got the contract, and they were going to give me black and white illustrations and this and that. And here was the retail and all. Got to the very end, and you only have to pay us $6,450. It was 1995. And I sat down on the kitchen floor and cried because my husband was just starting teaching. I was a stay-at-home mom. I had a sick child. And so I wrote him back and said, I can't even begin to afford that. Can you please send my stuff back? And they did, which surprised me. Now I just thought, and I put it in a drawer. And of course, years and years later, I learned about vanity presses and all. And one day I got a call, and the woman said, "You don't know me. My name is Kim Spinagle. And Sue from church gave me your phone number and said, you write children's books." And I said, "I try to." She said, I'm an artist and I'm an illustrator, and I would like to work with someone. Maybe we can get together. Okay, so that was May of 95. And we got together, we exchanged over, because she only lived the next town over. So she was only 15 minutes from me. We liked what each other did. So we said, yeah, let's give this a shot. She wanted to finish up her job of, she had daycare in her home. So that following September, we got together and we started to work on it. Kim, I worked for David C. Cook, so she knew about book layout, how things go, making a dummy book and all that stuff. And we worked, we didn't know what the heck we were going to do with any of it. But the summer of 97, I got a postcard in the mail for Sandy Cove Christian Writers Conference. No idea why it came to me. Of course, that I didn't know then, I know now, because that was God. I never heard of Writers Conference, so I called the number. Gail Roper was the director that year, and she answered the phone, and I said, got this picture. I said, "What is a Writers Conference?" And she laughed, and she said, "Okay." So she explained, and then she asked me, was I a writer? And I'm like, well, I'm trying. And so Kim and I both got a scholarship because they were running a special for brand new people. And it was $150 each for this with Shirley Brinkerhoff for 3 days with her. And she was amazing. I'm sad that she's gone. But they gave us 50% scholarship each. So we had to come up with $75, and it included our lunches. And we didn't have it, neither one of us. We literally did not have it. So we went to our church and to the missions committee and asked, because the Beatrice books were like more Sunday school books. The gospel was presented in that. So it's a form of missions. And they gave it to us. And we took day trips because it's about an hour and 10 minutes from my house. And we met Christine Tangvald. I don't know if anybody's familiar with, oh, I see Leslie. They're still in business. Vintage Press. I met Christine Tangvald, who is a little spunky piece of dynamite. And she's like the grand dame of Christian children's picture books, except for I think Michelle Medlock Adams has probably given her a run for her money at this point. But she loved what she did, what we did. And she gave us letters of recommendation for 3 publishing houses. I don't remember them all now, but because I can't. Standard was one. Can't remember. But Liz Duckworth gave me my first rejection. I forget which house she was with. 2 rejections, and Concordia picked us up. 2 rejections, right? Concordia picked us up. And we did the hallelujah dance around the kitchen, and so we still, what shows that Sandy Cove, if y'all are brand new at writing, anyone who's brand new at writing, get to a writers conference. I went there and I found out everything I didn't know about writing, which was like nothing. I knew nothing. I look back at some of my proposal letters and I am mortified. And we're telling people God's gifted us and we love to write for children and all this stuff that you don't do. And that's what we did. But Concordia picked us up in 98, summer of 98. Our books didn't come out until 2001 because of circumstances. But one of the things I learned at a writers' conference was you will never get the first story that you ever wrote. You won't get it published. However, there it is. First book I ever wrote. They loved it. I had no idea that you couldn't do that until it was like later. And guys, we can't rule out what God wants, right? They also picked up, where are you? This one. They're little hardback books. They were retailed way back then for like $6.99, right? But we had so much fun with them. And in Beatrice loses her doll. Well, at the end, she, gets all her stuffed animals together and has a tea party because it's based on the shepherd and the lost sheep. And so whenever we did in-person book parties, we had tea parties. And I collected a bunch of little porcelain teacups, pretty ones from yard sales and all like that. And we baked mini muffins, and Kim made up a coloring page. And so that was a lot of fun. And it came out a month before 9/11. And so everything shut down, after that. And of course, there's no social media, there's no Twitter, there was barely websites. No, if I'm trying to remember if we had cell phones, but they weren't like, there's no cameras in them. There's nothing that we do now for marketing, none of it. And it was also the days of big print runs. And so they printed 10,000 of each book. By the time it went out of print, we had sold almost half the print run of both. I never understood why they didn't want more books from us. I know our editor left, a new editor came in, sent everybody stuff back because they were looking at the series for little boys too. And I know that's how that happens sometimes with a new editor. So we thought we were set. We're set for life. They love our books. They're going to publish all of them. Nope. And we went lots and lots of years, with trying to get published again. We still haven't been traditionally published together, but I'll get to that. We're hopeful. Then I met, I had self-published a book of youth group skits. And so one of the local bookstores was having a signing of local authors, and I met Jana Carmen there. I don't know, she's from my area, so I don't know if anybody knows Jana. She used to write for Lilinas, which is script writing stuff. She did a lot of the Readers Theater and all. But anyway, we met, we enjoyed each other's company. We traded books together. And she said, I'd like to bring you with me to my writers group. And I said, okay, what's that? Really didn't know anything, right? And so I went, and it was Marlene Bagnall's group for Greater Philadelphia. And when Carmen had Jana had health issues, I went by myself. And so Marlene is actually the one who helped me with the proposal for Beatrice. And so I think that's why we didn't get rejected. But I got involved with Greater Philly and ended up on her staff. And when she moved to the conference to the summer, I could attend, I could work, I could stay there. Didn't have to make day trips like I was doing when it was in April, because my Daryl's a public school teacher, and so he's off in the summer. So I definitely jumped in, with that. And after so many years, I ended up on faculty, and I was on her faculty every year. Met lots of people, learned, still took workshops. You can't write and get published and think everything, because everything changes all the time, and there's always stuff to learn and to be refreshed on, and so I try to always, even when I was only Greater Philly, and every now and then, because Sandy Cove stopped, I went a couple years, 2 or 3 years there, and then that stopped. And I've been about to Colorado. I've been to Mount Hermon once. Thank you, C. Murphy. That's where I met Brandy. Well, Brandy and I kind of knew each other, like talking on the Writer's View panel, but we got to meet each other for real then. And then let's see, where am I in my notes? Oh, and I learned about writing daily devotions. And so even though I wasn't getting book stuff picked up, I was selling devotions like To the Secret Place That just doing something little like that helps you keep going, because it's like, all right, well, somebody likes something I write enough to pay me $15 and it gets, published and goes all around the United States. I'm like, you're, uh, well, us writers, if we can't travel a lot, like I travel more than any mom that I know of has a special needs child, because I have a really good husband and I have great workers who help take care of Anna. So I'm able to do that. But we all are missionaries of the written word. Our words go places we can't. One of the ladies at church said, I just got your Beatrice books and I sent them to my grandchildren in Australia. And I'm like, what? I went to Australia. So that was cool. Um, when I decided I wanted to try to write something other than picture books, I started a novel, and I met Nancy Rue, and she was doing a continuing session at Greater Philly. And I did a paid critique with her. And several of us, when we met with her for the paid critique, she said to me, I'm meeting with a lot of you that you all don't need workshops so much as you need mentoring. And I didn't know what that meant either, but she asked me to ask Marlene about a mentoring weekend, just to see how many people would be interested, what could we do with it, where could it go. So we did that, and Nancy did the writing for middle grade and teens. Gail Roper came in, did adult fiction, and Marlene did nonfiction. It was just for a weekend. Columbus Day, January, Martin Luther King weekend. And it was great, and we loved it. And Nancy came back that following August, so it was 2002, and she did a mentoring clinic. And I said, oh, I want to sit with Nancy again. I learned so much from her. But then I thought, I'm being greedy. Other people need a chance. And so Marlene said, are you going to take Nancy's, class? And I said, no, and she said, no, she wants you all, if you were there in January, she wants you back so she can see what else you did. And I'm like, okay, sign me up. And there was a couple people weren't there from January and a couple new people. Well, we all decided we clicked. We clicked like we had been together for years already. And we're like, we're more than a summer thing here. Let's stay together. How can we do this? And one of the girls said, y'all can meet at my house because I have enough room for everybody. And she did. There was 11 of us. And we had our first mentoring weekend with Nancy. We agreed to meet once a year, Martin Luther King birthday weekend. And our first was January 2003. We are still together. We don't meet. COVID shut that down. And so, and then Brenda's house where we met, she's down in Florida now. So we can't really meet, but we lost our first member this January, the same weekend where we would have been together, Martin Luther King birthday weekend, Candy Abbott, Fruit Bearer Publishing. And we're still trying to figure out who we are without her. And I don't want to cry in front of you guys right now. So anyway, that made all the difference to me. And I've learned that most of us have a practice novel. My Gary Gilly novels, the first one's done, the second one's half done, third one's plotted out, probably never see the light of day. But what I learned from that is not only how like the craft of that, because it's a different craft than picture book writing, is that when in my little character, he's in the real world, my writing's okay. When he gets spiritually pulled into the inside of the computer and he meets all the computer things and on there and he fights computer demons, my writing went, whoa. And I started a fantasy and I sent it to Joyce, who was in my Joyce Magnan. I don't know if any of you know her novels, but she called me on the phone. She said, Pammy, you just found your voice. And I said, my what? You just found your voice. And I thought, I love fantasy. Why did I never think about writing it? And so I started working on Fairy Eater, and it took 12 years. I wrote little things in between, so the devotionals, that kind of stuff. And I met an editor at ACFW. I got a scholarship to go there. It's the first year Frank Peretti was there. He was getting Lifetime Achievement Award. So I applied and they gave it to me. And I drove from New Jersey to Indianapolis like a crazy woman, but I did it. And I met an editor there whose publishing house had mostly done nonfiction and they wanted to expand into fiction. And so she asked for, send me stuff. So I did. And I had also met Sally Apocadoc, who had just gotten into agenting then. And I knew Sally just from her blog from years ago. So when I got accepted, I contacted Sally and said, I got it accepted. Are you interested? She said, sure. So she did the whole thing that agents do and got to the editing part of it. And this person in her notes in track changes was nasty and mean. She hated my main character, called her stupid, called her a liar. In 492 pages, she said 2 nice things about my story. And I kept saying to Sally, is this, I've worked with an editor before. I don't think this is right. And Sally kept saying, we're Christians. Let's, try to find a way to work with her. You have to honor your contract. After 2 months of trying to do that and crying, and everybody went to work and school, and I sat and cried all day while I'm trying to. And when I got to the end of the edits, I had accepted like 90% of it. I just couldn't accept when she was saying mean things about my characters. And I'm thinking, why do you want to publish this? I still never got an answer that I couldn't figure it out. And I finally told my group, Nancy Rowe and the group, or the crew. I finally told the crew, and they just flooded me with emails and phone calls that encouraged me. And I got one email from one of the members, and Daryl was home. The girls were home. It was evening. And I put my head down on the desk and I cried so hard. He said, if you don't stop crying, I'm calling 911, because I couldn't even breathe. And then I finally said, this is what's been going on. And, everybody said, why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you tell us? I was trying to be professional. I had an agent. That's who handles this stuff. Right. And so Nancy who's been, in the industry for, oh my goodness, 40 years. And she's a wonderful writer, lots and lots of books out. She's a wonderful mentor and all. And she said, this is not how editors treat authors. It's not. You should be able to have a conversation about changes and things. If she's accepted your novel, it's because she loves it, sees potential in it, and wants to help you make it better. And so I'd had a clause in my contract for termination. And my husband, who at the time was their union rep, said, I work with contracts every year. He said, you are not going against your contract. You're not dishonoring your contract if you utilize the clause that's in there to terminate. And so we decided to let's have a conference call. So it was me and Sally, and it was the editor and her business manager. And she was just as nasty on the phone as she was in her notes. And she screamed at me and yelled, and she was so ugly. And I thought, I still wanted to try. So at the very end, you got one more question? Any more questions? And I said, yes. Isn't there any way that we can find a way to work this out? And she screamed, absolutely not. And I said, okay, thank you for your time. And I terminated the contract. Had to pay a lot of money to do it. We got into our savings so I could do that, and got out of it. My husband said, you are getting out of this. You can't even eat, you can't sleep. You're crying all the time. You got to get out of it. And then the next day, Sally called and said, I hate to do this to you. Actually, she emailed me. I hate to do this to you, but I have taken on way, way too many people. And so she was letting some of us go. And I was okay with that. We weren't really a good author agent at the time, but we stayed friends, which is important, you know. And I know sometimes you're not always good author agent, but you can be good friends. And we're not good friends, but we are friends. So in the meantime, guess what happens? Realm makers happen. And so I missed the very first one, which disappointed me, but I knew it was coming. At the time, I was already on faculty for Greater Philly, and I couldn't just back out because I, wanted to go. So I went a few times there, and I met Michelle Harper, Love to Read, Love to Write Publishing. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna try again because it had been a couple of years. And so when I sat with her and had the proposal and everything, talk with her, and she wanted to read the full. And I said, there's something you need to know, because I know Christian publishing at that time, it is small. And because that was like 2016. And so I've been in the industry for a while by then. And so I explained very briefly what had happened, that I don't know if you'll hear this, that, oh, Pam Halter broke a contract, blah, blah, blah. So it was in the contract that we weren't supposed to talk bad about each other. And I have never done that. Just relate. This is basically what happened. And I don't give names or anything like that. So, and who knows, you don't always know what's going on with people at the time. I would have stayed and worked with that publishing house, that editor, if she had wanted to at least try, and she didn't want to hear anything from me at all. So I don't know, maybe she was a frustrated writer. Maybe, I don't know, something happened bad that I didn't know about. But anyway, so Michelle took it. And when I got the email that said they wanted to publish Fairy Eater, it started with, "Dear Pam, I absolutely adore your story." And I put my head on the desk and I cried again because, I'm like, and yes, I had to go through editing. We did all of that, and it was okay because Michelle was open to dialogue, and there wasn't hardly anything we had to like really worry about because she liked what I did. And so I worked with her. We worked together, and problems with the contract. I had hired a literary lawyer to do that. It wasn't that part of it, but to negotiate, but that something happened. I couldn't get the contract until end of September of 2017. By that time, I was taking care of my dad, who was dying. He had gotten cancer. And once they figured out what kind of cancer it was, and they did the subdivide it, and so they knew what treatment, he only had a few days. They said maybe 2 weeks, and he was home for 8 days. And I took care of him because my mom had Parkinson's, and there was a lot of physical things she couldn't do. But because that contract was late, I had it. I was able to get it printed out. And I sat with my dad and I signed my contract with my dad and my brother, because my brother helped me create 2 characters. But dad was proud of my writing. He never told me, he was proud of my writing. And I'm like, okay, this is one of the things, if I had someone wanted to be a writer, you'd have been like, no, you can't make a living at it. But he was so proud. He was so proud. And so I got to do that. Sign my contract, and he knew, because it wasn't coming out to the year after, and dad wasn't going to be there. So that was kind of cool. You see, you don't know what happens when things get held up. You don't know what God's going to use them for, and so instead of getting frustrated with, oh, I got this delay and I wanted it this time and that, which is our first reaction of, oh man, but all the things that have happened to me with delays and things, I've always been able to see later on that it was God did that on purpose, because if I had signed my contract when I was supposed to, that was back in the spring, we didn't even know dad had cancer, so God does that. Even the miscarriage, God used that to bring Daryl and I to true faith, true and saving faith. If we hadn't had to cling to him for that, and the grief was so bad that we wouldn't have known him, we wouldn't got to know him. And so I don't have frustration or anger, to God for that. I'm a little frustrated about other things with my father, but not that, because he used it to save me. What better? I was wondering, like, what was the purpose? What's the purpose of my son's life? That short life in my belly, and it was to save me, my husband. And so, hey, can't argue with that, right? So let's see. Somewhere in between all of this, I became Marlene Bagnall, and encouraged me to do some children's book editing, some freelance editing, because she said you have really good instincts. And when we did our critiquing after our monthly meeting, she says, "Why don't you give that a try?" So I did that, and I'm still doing that for not a lot anymore. I did more than what I used to, but not as many people are. I don't know if I don't know. Anyway, it's fine because I'm plenty busy. Um, Realm Makers happened, and they decided to do and in the meantime, trying to do Willoughby, trying to sell Willoughby. And Sally was still my agent then, and every house she sent him to were like, "Yeah, no, there's fairies in this. There's fairies. We can't do a book with fairies in." And she was like, "Y'all just literally publish a book of vampires anyway. Come on." But anyway, at that point, yes, Willoughby. That's right, Leslie Willoughby. You spelled it right. I picked that name because it's fun to say. Kids love to say it. But okay, just completely lost my train of thought there. Oh, Kim and I decided to do Willoughby ourselves through Fruit Bearer Publishing. I was a children's book editor there at that point, and Candy's house was more. It was you have fees and all to pay, but there's a lot that she helped and did with her authors, more than just self-published. So I'm not sure what's going on actually with Fruit Bearer now. So waiting to hear. And so we went ahead and released Willoughby ourselves and did that. Y'all have heard that, right? When Kimmy and I were on last year. But like we all do, and I'm assuming all of you have done this at some point, every now and then I go, "Oh, I don't think I should be writing. No, I'm not doing anything. It's hard. I'm frustrated. God doesn't really, I'm just going to stop, and I'm going to go like sew my quilts and my beach bags and stuff. And, I make more money doing that. And it's just as creative and just as wonderful. And so, but every single time I think I'm done, God encourages me in some way that can't be anything else but him saying, "No, keep writing." It's random things. The last time I wanted to quit, Brandy said, "Come to writer's chat." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll check it out." And I'm like, "What, every Tuesday? Really? Seriously? Y'all do this every week?" And now I'm like, "It's Tuesday, writer's chat." I love writer's chat. So, and then nothing was happening. And there was a contest for Realm Makers for their scholarship fund, and to write a short story, speculative in nature, Christian short story. And I had seen a couple pictures that I thought, "Oh, that'd make a cool story." So I'm like, I'll try it. I was going to donate to the scholarship fund anyway. And so I did. And there was 3 rounds. So it was your first round. If you made it to the second round, the judges gave you edits and things you got a chance to rewrite. And if you made it to the final round, you were automatically in the anthology. All right. So, I sent my story. Okay. I don't write at this point. I don't write short stories. I don't write in first person. And I hate, loathe, despise fight scenes in movies, in books, in anything. I hate fight scenes. This story was all 3. What the heck? And I don't write dystopian either. And it was that too. It made it to the second round. And I'm like, shut up. And that was where they were like, we want to see the fight scene, because I glossed over it. Oh, they fought. She won. But move on, you know. and, I'm like, oh. So at that point, Tim Shoemaker had joined the crew. And so I said, I need a guy's perspective here. I don't even, I'm even Lord of the Rings. I'm like, fast forward through the battle scenes. And so he helped me with things like, if a guy's reading this story, what's a guy going to want to, do without too much blood and gore? So he helped me do that. And I submitted it when I was supposed to. He made the final round. And I cried. I cry a lot. I cried because I'm like, I'm going to actually be in the anthology. I got something published that's not a devotional. This was like before Fairy Eater and before Willoughby and all. So what they did then was they went to another panel of judges there was a grand prize, but they also had stuff on their website, and people could look at the beginnings of each story and vote on what they liked. And I got people's choice, reader's choice, people's choice. So this is, I don't have a picture of the show, but there it is. Realmscapes. Looks backwards to me. Is it backwards to you guys? Okay. And very, very cool thing. I'm like, you can see Reader's Choice Award. Anyway, that was encouraging. I thought, well, good. I never have to write a short story again, right? And then 3 years after Dad died, my mom died. And that was during COVID, but she didn't die from COVID. It was complications of Parkinson's. So that was October 2020. Mom passed. 5 days later, one of my best friends passed. A month later, my cousin's wife passed. 2 months after that, my long time best friend Cindy passed and she had a blood disorder. And we're like, she was 57. And we're like, okay, we had her 7 years longer. The doctor said she might make it to 50. She might not. And then after that, probably 4 more other people. It's like in so many months, I lost 12 people. It was crazy. And I was in constant grief. And in the middle of all of that, somebody came up with this idea for an anthology set in Victorian England like that. I don't have a lot of time left here, but I thought, okay, I'll try it. So I said I would, I committed to it. And I got COVID, November 2020. And I was so sick with it, and high fever and the aches and everything that went with it. I thought, oh, I'm not going to be able to write this story. I'm going to go on Facebook and I'm going to say, guys, I got to back out. So I log on. 4 people backed out. Guilt. All right. How can I do this? And God gave me the idea to make my characters guardian angels. And so that means some of y'all give me your stories and then I'll write mine around it as my angels are helping you all out type of thing. And they accepted it. Let's see if I can find it for you. This one. This came out not too long after that. It's set in Victorian England, the year after Dickens released A Christmas Carol. And I can tell you about every single story in there is amazing. So many talented writers in there, and how it's all just in one town. So we got my characters and other people's stories and other people's characters and my story and stuff like that. So they did that. And the year after that, they did Harvest Tide. We are waiting for our edits and stuff for Summertide. And I fell in love with writing short stories, right? So then, Ye Olde Dragon books. They write their anthologies. I missed the first one for Beauty and the Beast because that was a springtime, and I don't remember why, but I got in on, all right, this one. And in the fall, they do classic monsters. And so this one's about werewolves. Well, I was on vacation and I'd probably had maybe 1 or 2 more glasses of wine than I should have, and I got the idea for a comedy. My werewolves love Broadway musicals, and they formed a little troupe and they performed for the I had werecats, all these things, and I'm cracking myself up. Well, they say, like, kill your darlings, right? If you really, really love your stuff and you're like, it's not going to work. They loved it. They were like, this will give us a break from all the blood and gore. And so they took it. I'm like, I was so surprised, delighted, but surprised. And let's see. Then they did, where are you? Why am I not? I know I put all these pictures up. I know Zoom does this sometimes where you can't. All right. Anyway, they did Rapunzel the following spring, Tales from the Tower. I've got a story in that. Then they did the one on Frankenstein, Who's the Monster? And coming out next week, May 1st, is Perchance to Dream. I know I had that. And that was Sleeping Beauty. And that's the one, Brandy, that's the one you read, the one for Sleeping Beauty. So in the fall, they are doing Creature from the Black Lagoon. I'm going comedy again. And I'm loving the short stuff so much because even though I'm working on the prequel to Fairy Eater and I know Michelle wants it, it's heavy. I'm at a heavy part of it. And so I do a little bit on that, and then I do something that's more fun. And I go back and forth with that. And when I think back on all of it, it comes down to what God has planned for us. And I think some of the things that we think we want to do isn't always what God wants for us. But when you know him, when you really know who he is, his character, about him, and you love him, then when he's telling you something, that I call it getting the nudge. I get the holy nudge, and I know it's him. I know his voice. And in high school, I wanted to be a mom and a writer. Life butted in. 17 years later, I had 3 children, 1 miscarriage, and I wrote to cope with the grief. And the joy of writing swelled up in me, and I remembered I wanted to be a writer. I had forgotten, but God didn't. And all of the years out of high school, he doesn't, he's not bound by time like we are, and he knows the plans he has for us. He knows before we're even conceived what he has for us to do. And so today I'm a mom and a writer, like I wanted to be, but more. I feel like I'm so much more ever than just being a mom and a writer. I never dreamed I'd be published, teaching workshops, editing children's books, and all, and mostly encouraging people. I love that even just as much as when I get my own stuff picked up. If I see somebody that I've edited or encouraged in some way and help them, and they get picked up by a publisher, it's like I'm like a book midwife. It is like so wonderful, and I love it. And I cry with them, and I laugh with them, and I love doing all of that. And it's all what God had planned, way more than being a mom and a writer, So anyway, that's my journey.
That's awesome. Thank you, Pam. I agree with some of the sentiments in the chat. Amen. I mean,
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to really look at all.
definitely encouraging. We did get one question. Stephanie popped one up and said, what typical length are your short stories?
Well, it depends on the publishing house. They tell you, between this and this. Mine tend to run a little under 5,000 words. So oh, thank you, Kathy. Oh, see, God knew you need to be here, right? I'm telling you, it is so cool to watch God encourage people. Like, how many times have I been on Writers Chat, and how many times all of us have been on Writers Chat? When Jim Rubart came in, was it Jim that came, had us all crying, last year or something like this? And I'm like, he knows, God knows what we need. And oh, and real quick, God's timing, and you think, I'm just going to give up. In between all of that, I have so many stories. I will never live long enough to have them all published. I'll never live long enough to write all the stories for the ideas that I have, right? And I got this story that I felt dropped right from God's lips to my ears. And even when I go back and I read it now, I just can't believe I wrote it. It's a family Easter devotional, Lamb of God. And I said, somebody somewhere back in biblical times must have grieved. They must have loved animals and must have grieved that they had to sacrifice animals to cover sin, but it's what God required. What can I write about that? And so I came up with a little shepherd boy and his sister, and how he pleads with God to, please, Lord, couldn't you find another way? By the end of the story, he's, met Jesus, the Lamb of God, and I broke it down into chapters. And then, like a lot of family devotionals, there's topics for discussion and scripture and all like that. The first time I got interest was, I think, in 2000. And Gwen Ellis was senior editor at Zondervan. She wanted it bad. She kept it for a year, trying to get interest on it. Everybody that I sent it to, so many publishing houses, we don't know where to put it. And I'm like, it's a devotional. Put it in with your devotions. Well, in one of the groups that I'm in, had Kathleen Kerr, who's now an agent, had said, because it was Ask the Agent Anything. And I asked, why don't publishing houses do this anymore? Because I know that years ago when Mary was little, they all did it for Advent. There was nothing for Countdown to Easter. And she said, they're starting to do that now. So I looked, did the market research, found a lot of Waterbrook, Noma, and all them, in the big five that are doing exactly what I want to do. And so, but they all want agents. So I'm like, So I contacted Sally. And I said, this is what's, she said, I know nothing about this, but if you would do the research and pull something together, I'll take a look at it. In the meantime, send me the story. And I did. And she loves the story, and she is going to try to help me with I'm waiting to hear from her about, do I need to give her anything else for the proposal? She's going to start sending it out. And this is what, 23 years later, 23 years later. It's never done unless God absolutely says, nah. Like I know with my little Gary Gilly novel, done. I know it's not, and it's fine. I'm okay with it. I learned a lot with it. I could not give this up, and I want Kim to do the artwork because it's amazing what she's done already for it. So, oh, Leslie got an idea. Don't you love to get great ideas? No matter what you're doing, it's like, yeah, I've got so many ideas. I'll never live one. So I'm encouraging you all to hang in there, because you don't know when God's going to move, and you don't know. You don't know. You don't know how he's going to use what you have. You don't know. Kim and I had done I got 2 minutes. Okay. Back in 98, when Beatrice got accepted, I just forgot to tell you this, you guys. Kim got invited to do some artwork storyboarding for this guy who was an inventor, and he had come up with an idea for multivitamin type things. And he wanted to have some kind of promotional video with talking fruits and vegetables, kind of like Veggie Tales, right? He wanted that. And he had gotten a writer, hated what the guy did. He found Kim, asked her if she knew anybody, and she said, as a matter of fact, I do. And so that one summer we worked, and I'm thinking, what the heck? I've never written anything like this before. 45-minute screenplay for this video. And so Kim and I worked together with it and came up with the Fruit Bowl Friends. And, we had the good foods and the bad foods, and how the bad foods are trying to kidnap the good foods so that nobody was eating healthy. And it was hilarious. And if I should say so, right? And Kim did all the storyboarding, and our husbands even jumped in and wrote 2 songs for it. And he paid us great. We got so much money for that, way more than what we asked for. But we never signed a contract. Oh, no, we're all Christians. We don't need contracts. This is going to be great. And you know what? We're going to set up college funds for your kids. But the guy was a schmoozer. I mean, he had people investing in it. He had people for the voices, he had everything in place, no contract with anybody. And it all kind of got dropped. And I went to Sandy Cove that fall of 98. And I took a screenwriting course and learned how to format it right. And I called and said, this is what I learned. I can send it out to Barbara Nicolosi, wants to take a look at it, Act One Hollywood. Oh, well, no, you send me all the changes and I'll do it myself. And I said, no, because we wanted to have a contract and he wouldn't do it. Well, then basically what we did was called work for hire, 1998. Okay. How many years did it take? I tried, no, work for hire. You can't do anything with it, can't do anything with it. And Paul Smith from Live magazine said, you can do it again. Just think of something else. Well, I couldn't think of anything until about 4 years ago. I came up with Food Fight. I think I read you all a little bit of that at one point, where I'm using talking vegetables and fruits and meats and things like that. You don't know when God's going to bring back something you thought was dead and gone, and you get to use it again and have fun with it. And so I'm waiting to hear from Bushel and Peck magazine when I learned about them from Children's Book Insider. So, it just, writers chats always include food. That's right. So you don't, when you have that passion in you that God gave it to you, it, then you don't give up, because it's not our timing. It's his. And we like to say God's timing. God's not bound by time. God just moves in seasons. And so yeah, you just don't give up, that thinking that what you had even thought of 30 years ago is dead and gone, because you never know when God's going to breathe some life back into it again. Amen.
Yes, amen. Thank you so much for that, Pam. That's been very encouraging. I know everyone in the chat's just saying the same. It's really blessed us today. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks for listening. I appreciate that.
So I guess we are a little past the top of the hour now, and so we'll probably be breaking to head to our after party. But we want to thank everybody for coming today and spending time with us and listening to Pam share her story. And I hope that you come away encouraged to keep writing and keep going at it, because God can use you. And again, not our timing, His work. And so,
Melissa, what do we have up next week?
Yes. Next week, we are going to have, here, let me pull it up, because I'm forgetting how to word it. Yes, we're going to have an update on social media, and which may include real tips as well. And this is going to be Carissa Brim, who comes and shares this with us. So we're looking forward to hearing from that, get a little insight on the marketing aspects of things. So we hope you'll join us next week. Great. And yeah, we'll catch you next time on Writers Chat. Thanks again. We'll see you later.